Something else we can do while we're waiting for glue to dry is to cut out the nozzle here. Now this is not required for flight. This is just an accessory to make it look a little cooler. Alright, so we're just going to cut this out of the cardboard stock. Now the instructions should suggest bending this over a corner here. So I'm going to move my camera a little bit so you can see the corner of my table. All right, and what we're going to do is just pull down on it as we kind of curve it around. This is just going to impart some curvature to it and make it easier to glue together eventually here. And you can do this multiple times to make it curvier. Alright, but we're going to glue it together like this, and then the last green ring that we have here is going to go inside of it, and then this will fit over the motor mount tube. And so even if the motor's installed, you'll be able to fly it with this in place. And depending on how you make it, you could also make this removable, and I'll show you how to do that as well. Okay, so we've got that part there. I'm going to get a little bit of masking tape handy. And then I'm going to get my glue here. Now I'm going to do this kind of like I do with fins. I'm going to let the glue get tacky a little bit. All right, so we'll put a little glue on there. Okay, get a nice even, get it right in my fingers again. Get an even spread, and now we're going to put this on. Okay, so that both sides now have glue, and I'm going to let this sit here for about a minute to get tacky. About a minute has passed, and so now I'm going to take my glue and put it back together here again. All right, and line everything up the way it should be. Alright, that is tacky. It's grabbing really well. A little bit too well. We need to move that down. About there. Okay, and I'm going to put this little bit of masking tape on just to hold that in place while the glue dries. Now this will stick down inside there once it's fully dry. But we also need to cut a notch in this so that the engine clip can freely move. So we want to cut about halfway through the thickness of the ring. Okay, looks like I need a little more, and it's better just to do this a few layers at a time than trying to get it all at once and then accidentally cutting through it. It's not the end of the world if you do cut through it, it just may be a little bit harder to assemble. Okay, I'm going to go with that. Once again, we need to let the glue dry. The glue on my nozzle has dried, and I've removed the masking tape. And so now we're going to put this ring down inside there, and that's just going to kind of snug fit in to begin with. Alright, and we see that it does. Okay, so that should go right into there. Okay, now we want it to kind of stick out just a little bit there so that the paper actually grips onto it. Otherwise it'll tend to pop toward the outer part again. So here I'm going to put the glue onto the ring itself. We don't want to use a lot. Just want a thin film there. Although we do want enough that it will kind of squeeze up into the void space, because this is at an angle, so there will be more space at the nozzle end than at the attachment end there. I'm just going to put it in like that. Let's squeeze that down onto the surface first of all. Alright, so we've got a little bit poking out there. And we're just going to make that uniform. That looks pretty good. Later on, if you want, you can put in some more glue around this if you think it's necessary. I think mine's going to be fine there. Just need to wipe off some of the excess glue. Alright, we'll let that dry once again. Now in the instructions it has us mounting this onto the motor mount tube at this point and then masking it to paint it later. I am not going to do that because this is supposed to be silver and the rest of the rocket is going to be white, and it's just going to be easier if I paint this separately and then put it onto the rocket later on. Here my nose cone has had about 4 coats of filling primer on it, and it's still a little wet right now. Once this dries after an hour or two, I'll be able to wet sand this with some 320 to 400 grit sandpaper, and that's going to give us a really smooth coat. And then if I still see seams and such and I want to get rid of them, and I may not, I'm not that picky about them, but if you do, you can add some more of this stuff afterward. And then once you've got it sanded and primed to the smoothness that you want, then we'll go ahead and put a top coat of white on this. Now, in the instructions, it indicates painting the top surface of the rocket white and the bottom black or gray. So looking at this as if it were a plane in flight, if you were looking up at the plane, you'd see the black or gray underside. I'm just going to paint mine entirely white because that's going to be a whole lot of masking. And to tell you the truth, I really don't like masking. Okay, and so for me, a white rocket is just good enough. I may also do a little bit of addition to the decal set. We'll see how that goes when we get to it. For now, this is going to get some sanding and priming additional to it, and then painting. We're still waiting on the fillets for the main part of the rocket, and then once those are done and we make any adjustments that we need, it will go and start getting painted as well. The glue on my fillets has dried, and I've also just friction fit the nozzle on here just to make sure it's going to fit, and it does. I'm going to go ahead and take that back off until we paint things. Okay, now the fin fillets and the top wing fillets look pretty good. Over here where we put the launch lugs on, though, we had some bubbles develop in here. And this often happens with launch lugs just because you've got some extra space under there that air bubbles can get trapped fairly easily, and then as it's drying out, those pop. And so you can either add some more glue to it, or you can use wood filler or this plastic contour putty. There are several brands of this. I have testers here. But this you can just squirt on kind of like glue. And even if you don't have the air bubbles in there, you can use this to build up your fillets if you like. It's not good for the first part of it because it's not very strong, but it is good for filling up space. Okay, so just like that. And this is non-toxic when dry. It's alcohol based, so it's not even going to hurt your fingers. It is water soluble, so you have to be careful when you go to paint this. Water-based paints can lift it up. And it does start to dry right away, so you don't get a lot of working time with it before it starts getting kind of crumbly. So we'll put this on. It takes a couple hours to dry, especially when it's this thick. And then we'll sand that, and if necessary, I'll put on another coat. And you can just keep doing this. So some people like to have their launch lugs blend right into the fins. And this is a good way to do it. It does take a little practice and patience, but it's not too difficult to do. Alright, so I'm going to let this dry, and I'll come back when they're completely done. Here I have the main part of the rocket primed and resanded. So this has 3 or 4 coats of sandable primer on it, and then I wet sanded it with 320 grit sandpaper. So it's almost ready to be painted. One other thing I'm going to do to this, and this is optional, I'm going to take some regular viscosity super glue, and I'm going to run this right on the inside edge here. And just enough to coat it and let it soak in. Alright, so all around the edge like that, and then just for a few seconds allow that to soak into the cardboard. And then I take a paper towel or a tissue here, and I'm going to just wipe that around to remove the excess liquid there. And this will dry in just a few minutes, and it provides a hardened edge here that will help prevent damage when the nose cone is inserted and ejected. Here I have my nozzle. It's been primed with white primer, and I notice here that there are little indiscrepancies here, little irregularities due to how the nozzle was cut out using scissors. And so here I'm just going to take a little bit of 220 grit sandpaper on a surface, and I'm just going to lightly twist this around. And that does not want to work that way, so I'm just going to do a little bit by hand here. And just try and sand down the high edges as much as possible. Okay, that's a little better. Alright, and then this is going to get painted silver. The main part of the rocket has now had 3 coats of gloss white paint on it, and I'm going to let this cure for at least 24 hours, give it a very fine wet sanding to knock down any little flecks and such, and then give it a final coat. And I will come back when all that is done and we're ready for the decals. The paint on my rocket is finished for both the nose cone and the main body. I also have the nozzle here, and we're going to glue that onto the motor mount tube. So I'm just going to set the nose aside here for a moment. And first just do a friction fit and make sure that everything's going to work the way it should. Because with the paint on both pieces here, it may be tight, and it is. So first I'm going to try a little bit of sandpaper here. This is 150 grit. I'm just going to kind of roll it up a bit. And then once it's inside here, I'm going to just gently sand a little bit here. There we go. Okay, so that should go all the way down, just like that. Okay, And then I'm going to now pull this back up enough to expose my motor mount tube there. And now I'm going to put a little bit of glue down around that. I'm going to use an applicator for this so I don't get big blobs of glue everywhere. Alright, try and keep it off the clip. Get better light here. So I'm just putting it right out along the base of the exposed motor mount tube there. Okay, now there's a little paint on here. This is not structural at all, so I'm not too worried about it. Alright, we're just going to squeeze that down on there. And then once that glue dries, you can kind of shape the nozzle a little bit. Alright, but up inside there, we still have plenty of room to get the motor in and out. Alright, over here on the forward end, you can go ahead and take the shock cord out. Okay, over on our nose cone, we're going to tie this on with a double knot or 2 half hitches. Okay, you want a little bit left here on the free end, but not so much that it's going to try and get up between the shoulder and the nose cone. So that's probably about as long as you want to have it there. I'm going to pull that taut. Okay, and then I found it's a good idea to put just a little spot of super glue on that knot because Kevlar does not hold knots well. It's actually kind of slippery. Alright, and then previously we had put the parachute together, and so when we're actually ready to launch, we can just clip that parachute on. Okay, now I'm not going to go ahead and fold this all up, but show how to do this. So when you're ready for launch, just clip this on to the eyelet next to the shock cord. Close that up, and then pack your chute in your preferred method. I'm going to take that back off for now. Here I'm just going to dab away any excess super glue. It's mostly dry already anyway. Okay, and now I'm going to put this back together in preparation for doing the decals. So this is starting to look like a pretty good rocket already, even without the decals. What I'm going to do now is make up a little basin of water with 1 drop of dishwashing detergent in that, and that will help us position and reposition the decals easier. Here I have my basin of soapy water. All right, and we've got the decal sheet here. These are all self-adhesive vinyl decals. And then in the instructions, there's a very small illustration here of where to put the decals. All right, and you can also use the packaging sheet here from the model itself to get an idea of where these go. Okay, so I'm going to start here with the porthole decals, I guess we can call them. Okay, and these are going to go along the side here and right on top of the wings there. So what I want, okay, so this one will be for the starboard or right side if you're looking at this from inside it. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is take this and put it in my soapy water. And this is going to temporarily make it less sticky so that we don't get a permanent adhesion on the decal until we're actually ready for it to be there. Alright, now I made a mistake. This one actually goes on the port side. So the little slant here should be upward. That's okay, we'll just move this around. Okay, and this should go almost up to the nose. And again, should kind of follow the edge of the wing there. Alright, so I've got it laid just like that. Okay, now mine looks just a little bit crooked. And this is where the detergent comes in. So if you don't have it quite where you want it to, you can lift it up and try again. I'm going to take a straight edge and see just how close I am. Still a little bit off, but not too bad. Well, just another little bit there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Alright, now I could bring it back a little bit, but it's right up to the edge there. I'm going to keep that. Once you've got it where you want it, then take a tissue or a paper towel and squeegee the water out. And this will slowly become permanent, usually well within 24 hours. Alright, now we've got this other little tapered decal that goes with it. Alright, so that's just this guy here. And it continues along the wing. So here, this is just going to come on to this edge. And then follow along the wing there. Try and get those to meet just exactly. Okay, so there's one side. It's still got just a little bit of crookedness to that. Again, you should be able to pluck this off and back down if you want to. I'm going to continue with the other decals off camera and then come back when I'm done. I have all of the decals on, and so here we've got the finished rocket going from the nose here. We've got a hatch on either side. I assume that's supposed to be a filler cap or something like that for fuel. Alright, we've got our passenger section going by there, our wings, and all the way back to the engines. Okay, a little bit of detail on the underside, but not much. And with that, I hope you had fun building this with me. Have a great flight and a safe recovery. And please stay tuned for more of my videos.